Hey everybody, what's going on? Welcome to an all-new Talkin Movies. As always, I am your host, the real Geno Reynolds, and today we're going to be talking about the spinoff, reboot, whatever you want to call it, that is Bumblebee. Now, my history with the Transformers movies is well known on this channel. The first one I was a little more forgiving of when it first came out, but then we got the second one, and then we got the third one, in which the third one I actually liked what they did with the Autobots and Decepticons, but the humans were still stupid. And then we got the fourth one, where they wrecked the Dinobots, and then we got the fifth one where they changed the history again, and all of a sudden they're there with King Arthur, and it just got dumber and dumber. And then of course Unicron was Earth, and I guess they played with that idea on one of the cartoons, but I never got to see that. I heard they did it way better. But anyway, then from what was probably going to be a cash-in movie, because these movies make bank overseas, a cash-in movie had to turn into something different. Bumblebee, in my opinion, was going to be partially at least based on the little bit of a scene they showed in the last movie where Bumblebee was there around, I believe it was World War II. I can't remember if it was 1 or 2. I believe it was 2. And where he fought alongside the Americans then. And they had to kind of erase that because the last movie was crap, and it did crap at the box office. They finally realized that, Michael Bay should not be touching these movies. Finally, it only took them 5 movies. But anyway, so they had to take Bumblebee and change it from what it was supposed to be to a possible soft reboot. They had to kind of decide, okay, what can we keep? What do we need to change? And I have to say that what they did to it, for the most part, worked. Now, I'm not going to really spoil this movie for you, but I do have to talk about a thing or two about this change of things that they had to do to make it work, and something that was left in that didn't really make any sense if the World War II stuff wasn't. Anyway, we'll be talking about that, so there might be some minor spoilers for the movie. I do want to talk about the stuff that I didn't like first. First, Michael Bay is still a producer. That being said, he's not directing, he's not writing, he's just dropping money into it. I'm okay with that. As long as he just wants to give money to it, I'm fine. Let people that know how to make good movies based on people's childhoods, take over, instead of you ruining my childhood 5 times over. And I know people say, well, he's not really ruining your childhood. You can't argue that he somewhat bastardized the Transformers. This movie somewhat makes up for it. We still have to deal with the whole thing with Bumblebee can't speak. Now, he does have a voice at first, because we do see how he loses it, and then how he starts using the radio to talk. His voice is Dylan O'Brien from Maze Runner at the first. And I think that really works. And I do hope that later, if they do get to continue this storyline now, that they get back to giving him a voice. I mean, the whole thing of him having to find a voice made sense in this movie. It was a whole communication thing. But in a way, I feel like it's still a hanger on that, well, this was a whole part of this movie and we couldn't change it because, it has to match up with the Transformers movies later. Here's how I'm looking at this. Okay, you can look at this movie 2 different ways. You can have either it's part of the old universe where you have to match it up with the other movies even though they don't all match up, or you can look at it as a reboot. And I choose to look at it as a reboot. Because while I'm fine with them having the stuff from the old movies, I'm not really a fan of it, but I'm okay with it. If this was the first movie they gave us, I would have been okay with all the not being able to communicate, having to use the radio to communicate. It wouldn't have felt like the cheap parlor trick that it's felt like for 4.5 movies already. It would have felt like, well, he lost his voice. He has to find a way to communicate with these humans to tell them that they might be in trouble. Whereas in the other movies, it was just there to be a joke. Another thing I didn't like about this movie was, and this is a mild spoiler, and this plays into the whole World War II or One thing, whatever it was. They have this scene where Bumblebee kind of goes into war mode. His eyes start to glow red, and he just starts shooting up the place. He's kind of out of control, and I think that had something to do with the past stuff. Like that was his old mode, and now he's changing. He changed into the Bumblebee we know and love. I think it had something to do with that. And it's still in the movie, but they make no reference to the stuff from the past because, well, it doesn't exist anymore. So having this war mode may come in later, but really it made no sense in this movie. So I didn't like that was still in there. I wish they would have been able to change that somehow, but I could see how they couldn't, because the scene that it's in, it kind of makes sense that it happens, but there's really no reason for it to happen to this character. I mean, yeah, he was part of the war for Cybertron, but it doesn't play into that scene. So anyway, the last thing I really didn't like about the movie was, and I can't even remember the actor's name, and I can't even remember the character's name, but the best friend character. The best friend character was there to be they were supposed to tease a love interest, and the character was just kind of pointless. The friendship between Haley Steinfeld's character, Charlie Watson, and Bumblebee is the key friendship of the movie, and that is really where it needed to focus. And I think this side character just kind of was there to try to be funny, and he just wasn't that funny. And he was there to be kind of encouraging every now and then, because Charlie Watson, the character, she was kind of damaged. She had lost her dad, and they have this whole thing about her being a diver, and that was the last time she saw her dad was at some dive meet, and it plays in a little bit to the story. It's not really honestly necessary. They were just trying to humanize her character, and I get that, and it's fine. And again, if this was the first offering, it would have been a little cheesy, but it's fine. It's not my favorite part of the movie, but the side character, the friend, just kind of is there. So, and you could also say about John Cena's character, Agent Burns. He's definitely he sees the Autobots and the Decepticons fighting, and they're all the same, and until he sees the difference in Bumblebee. You know, it's that kind of character. I will say, though, that John Cena got to have some of the funnier lines in the movie, especially whenever our government kind of instantly trusts the Decepticons, or at least thinks they're playing the Decepticons, and John Cena makes a comment about how deception is in their name, and that was kind of funny. So he plays his role fine, and he's fine in the movie, but his character's nothing really special. Now, what do I like about this movie? Again, if this was the first offering they gave us, everything else, because the first of this movie, while I will not spoil what you see, you do see part of it in the trailer, the Cybertron stuff. You get to see a little more, and as a fan of the Transformers, especially as a kid, you get to see some stuff you know, and you get to see some stuff you like, and it's just makes you grit your teeth just a little bit and want to flip Michael Bay the Bird, thinking, why couldn't you have given us this from the beginning? Because the way he had the Transformers in the beginning, I always said they had too many moving parts. They were too piecey, if that's a word. They had just too much going on. And after watching Bumblebee, the screening I went to, they had kind of a making of type of thing at the end. And they talked about how they wanted you to be able to recognize parts of the cars and things like that on them. And it's like, yeah, it's the way it should have been the first time. Let's just put it this way. All the Transformers you see that you know and love, you can tell it's them, and they look fantastic. Now, granted, the first of this movie shows a scene, and I kind of wished it would have been the entire movie, but what we do get is pretty fantastic, and it's what Transformers fans have been waiting for. You get to, granted, they don't, I was a little disappointed they didn't get some people for voices for this. I would have liked that a little better, and I know some you can't get because they've passed away, but there's some you could have gotten that you could have used. But you know what? Everyone, let's just say, sounds the way they're supposed to sound. And I really enjoyed getting to see this fully CG animated Cybertron for the very first of the movie. It definitely kicks off the movie in a right way. Just the first part of that movie alone, of this movie alone, is better than every Michael Bay version of Transformers. Now, the story on Earth I liked because it's very personal. They do build up Bumblebee as a character. Again, they do kind of play with that rage mode thing, but the rest of it is him. Again, he has a voice at first, and he loses it, and he has to figure out how to communicate with the humans because they could be in trouble. And he is doing his best to protect them. And of course, when he meets Charlie Watson, she teaches him things like, well, the world doesn't understand things that are different and things like that. So the human to machine element works really well in this. The communications or lack of communications and trying to communicate between Charlie and Bumblebee works really well for the movie. I like the fact that it doesn't overdo it when it comes to the Transformers in this one. It's more, you have granted, you have the opening scene on Cybertron, and there's a flashback to Cybertron, but for the most part, the movie involves just a few different Transformers. Bumblebee, for the most part, of course, it's his movie, and then you also have Dropkick and Shatter, who are hunting Bumblebee, and then also another Transformers hunting him later or earlier in the movie. So you have just a few Transformers, and you can tell who they are. You can tell who they are by the look of them. The action isn't. It's easy to tell what's going on with the action. When Transformers get destroyed, the explosions mean something. Michael Bay. It's not just boom, 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 boom everywhere. The action's great until the action stops. Let's just put it that way. There's not much more I can say about this movie. While granted, the cartoon movie is still the best Transformers movie. Of course it is. This movie is by far the best Transformers movie we've gotten in the live action form. Is it perfect? No. Is it a great start if the ending in this movie kind of negates every other Michael Bay movie, and I like that. So it seems like they're trying to pseudo restart the franchise, keeping some things because they kind of had to, but then giving us Transformers fans especially what we have been wanting for years. And I can't recommend this movie enough. Again, it's not perfect, but as a Transformers fan, I am very, very satisfied. That's going to be all for this edition of Talkin Movies. If you like what you've heard here, please subscribe to the Real Geno YouTube channel, like this video, and if you have anything to say about Bumblebee, make sure to leave a comment in the section below. As always, I'm your host, the Real Geno, Geno Reynolds. See you later. Transform and roll out.